Just to give you a piece of that song there. Hermes Polka Time was Johnny Pecan. He was one of the most iconic guys, and I'm friends with his sons. Both of his sons, Jeff Pecan and Johnny Pecan Jr., still have the band to this day. And I got to play a job with them about 3 years ago, which was magnificent. It was a great feeling to play with them. So back in the earlier days when Johnny Pecan was in the Navy Seabees, who was playing with the Johnny Pecan band while Johnny Pecan was out serving? They had this young 16-year-old accordion player at the time named Eddie Habit. Eddie Habit ended up having his own band in the late 40s and 50s, and he had a recording contract for Decca Records. These guys were big time, you know. They weren't just with ABC Records, they went for the big time. So Eddie Habit had great successes in the 1950s, and this was his theme song when he used to play for week broadcasts. That's just a piece of that song there. That was Eddie Habit's theme song. That was called the Strawberry Hill Polka. But these are all tunes that were very popular in their day, and they would play these songs right when they started their broadcast. Now, Eddie Habit was good friends with a guy named Peter Bastasic. He was a Croatian guy. They were house painters together. They would go paint houses during the day, then they would drink whiskey and sing and play polkas all night long. So Pete Bastasic started his own radio show in 1948, and he had it up until 1997. And he took on the stage name of Kenny Bass. He had a group called the Polka Poppers in Cleveland, Ohio for a lot of them. They also recorded on Decca Records too. So here is his theme song. Imagine having a daily polka show for over 40 years on the radio. I think it was WEMS, I think, in Cleveland. Very iconic band leaders. Why am I talking about these guys? Because they all came from the same neighborhood. They all had major recording contracts. And their music filtered down to my grandfather and all these musicians from McKeesport and all the surrounding areas. All these guys had 4 or 5-piece bands, and they're making all these records on these major recording labels. And all these musicians in this area are getting these records, and they're saying, wow, listen to this sound. There's one more guy I'm going to mention. His name was Johnny Vadnal. I'm actually a big fan of Johnny Vadnal. He had a musical family, and he recorded on RCA Victor Records in the 50s. Here was his theme song. talked about the local accordion studios. There was also a guy from McKeesport named Olivio Paradise. He was an Italian guy. He went by Leo Paradise. I know his brother Jess Paradise was a longtime councilman in Liberty Borough. He may still be. But Leo Paradise is another guy I wanted to mention that was a accordion teacher from McKeesport. Can you imagine having 4 or 5 accordion teachers just from around this area? Unbelievable. So, I wanted to talk about the multi-styles of polkas too. So there's so many different styles of polkas. What I'm playing for you is a Cleveland style, Slovenian style, from Collinwood neighborhood in Cleveland. And a lot of these groups in this area from the 40s to the present day embraced these recordings from this neighborhood, from these 5 iconic guys. And there's so many bands that were offshoots of those guys. But let's talk a little bit about Polish now. Now, the Polish style, just like the Slovenian style, they started with big bands. They had big groups at Polish clubs. And then after the 1940s, they downsized their groups also. There was a famous Polish composer who was like Frank Yankovic. Frank Yankovic put out 16 accordion books. I have them all. And the first 4 or 5 of them are the best ones. I think after that they kind of got diluted, but you could go play. I'll play half that stuff Wednesday night in the Blue Top, from the Yankovic books. There was a popular Polish composer named Ignatius Podgorski, and Podgorski put out these books of Polish-style music too. And just like the Slovenians, the Polish groups after the war were downsized, And now they refer to Polish music as 2 styles. There's an Eastern style and there's a Chicago style. Now, the Eastern style of Polish music is the old big band style, like Frank Wodorowski in the 50s and Ray Henry. And to the current day, I think there's only a couple of bands left that really play the Eastern style, which the famous one is Jimmy Sturr. Jimmy Sturr, he won many Grammys. And then also Walt Wagner. Walt Wagner is another band leader from Connecticut that does the Eastern style. Now, the Chicago push style came out in the 70s and 80s and became very contagious and very popular. It's driven by a concertina. It's not an accordion like this one. And a concertina is like a Slovenian button box or like a harmonica that can only play in maybe 3 or 4 keys. And that's why some people say, polkas all sound the same. They're not all the same. Just in the Polish style of Chicago style, when you have a concertina in the band, you can only play in maybe 3 or 4 keys. And usually they're tuned to the key of D. So if you could play in D and G and A, you could probably play in a Polish style polka band in the Chicago style. There are some iconic people that play the Polish style polkas from the McKeesport area. Let's talk about the old bellhops. The bellhops were out in the old days, maybe in the 50s. And it was Henry Jazzowitz. Now I'll say Jazzowitz because that's the English style, but it's Yashevich. And Henry Yashevich had a musical family. He had his daughter Diane, and his son Henry Jr. Henry, and they called him Henny. And they started off with the father's band, the Bellhops. I believe that the father was a violin player, and Henny played trumpet and Dee Dee played the keyboard. And in later years, they were known as Henny and the Versajays. Grammy-nominated polka band from McKeesport on the Polish side. Now, Henny had passed away a few years ago. He actually owned an automobile repair garage at the bottom of my street in the Peterson plant. When I'd wake up in the morning, I'd hear brrr, brrr, brrr. That was Henny taking tires off of the trucks down there. But I got to know him really well. I was proud to bring him in a couple years to play at the Village. But Dee Dee's son is a well-known national musician now, Ryan Ogrodny. He started out playing violin. He was a star at the McKeesport High School, and he's very much into country music, and now he is a recording artist in the studios in Nashville. Right from McKeesport here, Ryan Ogrodny, but he came from polkas. He came from Henny and the Versajays. And I also wanted to mention, just over the hill in Port View, there was a guy originally from Glassport named Ray Jaroszynski, and he has a group called Ray J and the Carousels. They're very popular also with the Chicago style. The Gibala family from McKeesport here is another Polish family very well known. Teddy Gibala. They say Gibała in Polish, but Gibala. You see him around the Polish church sometimes. If I'm driving up Eden Park Boulevard, he's outside with a hose spraying off the the sidewalk, or he's parking cars. He's very busy with the Holy Family Church here across from the high school. But I also wanted to mention the Gibala family is very famous. There was also another famous Polish-style polka band from McKeesport here back in the 70s named the Peppermint Sticks. They weren't together for a lot of years, but they made quite an impact. So if you know the names Sesterik and Gibala, Mark Liebram was in the band, and also Stolars. They all performed with that group. And also, who can forget about Jumpin' John Hukarowski from East McKeesport? We lived in East McKeesport for a lot of years. But he was originally from the Adderley section of Wall. See, there's a lot of culture in this area, and we all coexist, and we're all great friends and colleagues. And through the years at International Village, you know, doing all the booking of all this different entertainment, I always try to bring in different bands every year. I never like to use the same band all the time, because outside of being a performing musician, I'm also a fan of the music. I'm fans of all these bands and all these great musicians, and I want to see live music do well, and all these musicians do well. So, we all know Bobby Vinton, right? He was from Cannonsburg, and he had this hit. Moja droga, ja cię kocham, means that I love you so. Moja droga, ja cię kocham, more than you'll ever know. Kocham ciebie całym sercem, love you with all my heart. Return to me and always be my melody of love. Thank you. That's one of the most popular tunes that all the Polish people really love. And did you notice that the tempo of that was a little bit slower? The Polish style is slower, but it has this like a hop to it. They do this hop dance. I'm no dancer, and I never played one in a movie, but the Polish style has always been slower. Andy, did you want to say something?
No, I hope everyone's enjoying the program, and I didn't know if maybe you had questions that.
Well, I was going to do a Q&A in a little bit. I'm coming. You're not rushing me. They said, how long does your program last? I says, I don't know. I've never done one of these before. People usually telling me to shut up, you know. So I wanted to just touch on some of the bands and musicians that I remember from McKeesport. For the last week or so, it's been kind of an emotional time for me, I'll say, because, you know, leading up to the village, part of me's thinking about this year. And I want to be successful this year, and I'm thinking, I hope that we have good weather, and I hope everybody shows up, and I hope nobody runs out of food, and I just hope there's no casualties. I just hope that we do well this year. But a part of me thinks about the past. I think about all the days gone by, and obviously I haven't been around as long as some of you have, but you know, I think about the memories that I have, and a lot of the people that aren't around anymore. And I think that's what drives me to be who I am, because I would say I'm interested in the culture and the heritage, but I really enjoy and I embrace bringing this older music to people that haven't heard it for a long time. Or I love to bring back old memories for people. And I have, as the years are going by, well, I'm 47 already. Wow, this is the oldest I've been my whole life. We talked about this for a long time. Okay, so we talked about Ivan Bacon and the melody tunes. Okay, there was another accordion student. Now, sure, there were tens and hundreds of musicians in the area, polka tamburitsa. I can't remember everybody, but I'm telling you the significant ones that I knew. But Andy Pawanda was originally from Clareton, and he was also an accordion student of Chester McConey in McKeesport. By the way, Chester McConey did not know how to play the accordion, but he taught it. He never went out and played a job, never played a gig, but he taught the accordion, Chester McConey. So he had Andy Pawanda. And where Andy Pawanda comes into this is, and once again, when Ivan Bacon had his band and John Capus left, to just go with Walt Zemansky, they would use Andy Pawanda then in the group. Andy Pawanda's still alive. He and his wife live in North Huntingdon. My band played for their 50th wedding anniversary, and I just played 2 years ago for their 60th wedding anniversary. So Andy Pawanda's still around. His son Kevin has the travel agency down in Irwin. So I wanted to mention Andy Pawanda. He's another one of those guys. Okay, I talked about the Arcadians. Okay, in neighboring Versailles, there was a saxophone player named Pete Durkis, and he affectionately went by Patsy, called him Patsy Durkis. When my grandfather's band, the Arcadian, lost their sax player because Oni Sharbaugh had passed away, he got Patsy Durkis to fill in for the last 3 or 4 years of the Arcadians. But back in the 50s, Patsy Durkis had a group called the Cafe Boys. And they played for how many years? And he had all kind of local musicians that played. I remember the longtime mayor of Bethel Park, Reno Virgili, was one of his accordion players. Danny Pavlik, you know Danny Pavlik, he went to the Duquesne University Tamburissons. He played in the Cafe Boys. Andy Pawanda also played accordion. My neighbor right across the alley, John Hosnai, was their longtime bass player. Also, when Hosnai would play tamburitza music, there was another local bass player named George Bacon. George Bacon was from close by Versailles, but how he has McKeesport ties is he had a barber shop at the bottom of my street. If you are in, let's see, the Auto Zone, like on Walnut Street or with the Buy and Fly, right across the street from there, if you're looking right across the street, the bottom of my old street comes out there. There's a garage there. Well, there used to be another little building here, and that was Bacon's barber shop back in the day. And he was another character. He played bass, and he would play with the Cafe Boys also. And he had turnover of musicians. It's inevitable when you